Hello, dear pilgrim, and welcome to this acrylic art journey with the Beaver. But before we get into this beautiful tutorial, let's get this flame of peace, hope, and love for 2026 going. And there we have it. May all beings benefit, right? Now, this acrylic art journey with our sacred Beaver Spirit Animal Guide is going to be truly transforming. And it is so transforming and so guiding that I have decided to begin each art journey with a beginner-friendly episode, because there are a lot of beginners in acrylic that is on our beautiful transfiguration tier, and they find my full tutorials a little bit advanced. So here I am as your creative wizard, and I've decided to create something especially for that part of my audience that has never picked up a brush and has no idea where to start. And even though I have created numerous paint by layer and painting for beginner kind of workshops, I will add some links to these workshops on my Patreon in the description of this video. So check it out. If you're a beginner, you've got no clue where to start, these videos are really basic and they're going to help you just familiarize yourself a little bit more with the magical medium of acrylic paint, right? So what will you need for this exercise? Because if you're a beginner, this is basically all you need. I'm literally painting on paper, not just for the camera, but because it is cheap and affordable. And when you're a beginner, it is nice to just play on a material that's not going to cost you a lot of money, that you don't feel so sorry for about, but it is still on a medium in case you have a beautiful painting at the end that you can put it in a frame and enjoy it, right? You're going to need some basic brushes, and today I'm going to be using the following. So I've got a square flat brush, and that's about 1/2 inch. I am going to use a pencil. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch filbert. A filbert is just slightly rounded. It's not so square. And I'm also going to use a fineliner. Now this is like a number 6. So in this particular range, it's about in the medium kind of range, but it has a lovely fine tip so that we can do some liner. You're going to need black acrylic paint. I'm going to also play with a brilliant blue, but any blue would do. And I'm also going to start you off with a burnt sienna. This is commonly in every starter kit, so it should be one of the easiest and most affordable acrylic paints out there for you to start with. And then titanium white. This is basically a very good place to start, because all of these colors you will continue to use throughout your painting journey. So if you have to run off to the art supply store and you want to get some acrylic paints, then you know what to look for, and you don't have to overspend and get things that you don't need right away, at least not for this project. So I'm painting here on an A4 size watercolor paper, and it's not the expensive stuff. This is truly student grade, but it's just a place for me to begin. I've taped off an 8 inch by 8 inch square here to give me a nice canvas to work in, so that it's not too overwhelming with too much space. So I can teach you guys a little bit about how to use composition in your art, because when you're a beginner, it is very easy to think, okay, I'm going to draw the beaver here to the best of my ability, and you end up with a small little picture in the bottom right, or any of these corners. And then it feels like you've squashed the sort of thing that you are painting, or the image, into a corner where it doesn't fit. So to help you with that, I have decided to begin with this basic drawing from scratch so that you guys sort of can see my process. And this is one of the reasons why I love acrylic paint so much, because it is so forgiving, it dries rather quickly, and it layers on top of each other beautifully. And it's in those layers where we begin to notice a metaphor. So many things that's happening on our canvas is happening in our lives as well, right? So I love to use the canvas as a place where I reflect on my life, and little incidences that happen during my painting process usually triggers attitudes, perceptions or ideas, or maybe even beliefs that I have. And the whole idea here is to be honest with myself while I'm painting. So if I make a boo-boo, my reaction to that is exactly what I want you to become aware of in yourself, because that is running by default. Those kind of attitudes or responses, our perception on the world, it is so well programmed into our reality that we sometimes forget to become aware of it as a program that is running. Because I firmly believe that life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. So let that sink in for a minute and just reflect on that. If you could turn this truth around and realize that life is happening through you and not to you, it is rather life altering, because that means that somewhere along the line you have relinquished your authority, you've given your power away to systems and to things that happened to you in your life, and you've really sort of let it define who you are because you keep telling that story, right? So in our art process, I want you to become aware of moments when you become frustrated with the brush and the paint, when it's not doing exactly what you wanted to do. So if you're a little bit of a control freak like me, this is the challenge, is to really lean into it, to let go, and to allow your own authentic brush mark and mark making to appear on the paper, because you have to meet yourself there, right? That is where your skill level is at right now. But if you continue to work with me, we're going to work on those brush marks and we're going to improve those skills. And before long, you will be painting with me the full tutorial, including the fine art detailed one that is about to follow after this episode. So this is a good place for you to start if you're a beginner, but let it not just be for beginners. Let me just showcase to all of my Transfiguration tier members that there's always something to learn, and this can be just as much fun, especially if you're on a tight schedule. You really want to get into the Beaver kind of teaching and what the Beaver is here to teach us, but you don't necessarily have time for a full fine art painting now, then you can go ahead and do this exercise with me and just enjoy the rest of the episodes and learn through observation and reflection. That is my sincere hope, that is how you guys will meet me on this tier, right? Alrighty then. So I think I'm going to start with the basic sketching, and a compositional sort of tip that I can give you is you can always look at the space where you begin. In this case, it's a literal square. So if I use my ruler and I just divide this in half, you will notice that the beaver is not sitting right in the center of my page. So that is always helpful when you have 4 equal squares, or you divide your canvas, whatever shape it is, in equal parts. Then you want the subject that you're going to be painting to be sort of more in one or on one side of that painting while still filling the whole space. So this is where I give space for the tail of the beaver. As you notice on the left of the canvas, that's sort of the only thing that you will notice on that side. On the right side of the canvas is basically the whole beaver design. So this is slightly asymmetrical, but it's a little bit more interesting. So this allows the viewer eye to move around the painting. There's air to breathe. We leave space around the subject where we can play and add other elements later. So this is going to be quite cartoonish, very basic, but a lot of fun. Alright, so then you've already learned something about composition that you might not have known before. Alrighty then. So I'm going to just bring up my reference material for you guys, and this is just a cute little beaver, and we're just going to focus on the shape and the outline and the basic composition, and other than that we're going to make it our own, right? So now that you know which colors we're going to use, we're going to take a pencil. I've got here just an ordinary HB, but I think I'm going to try for something a little bit darker. Here's a 2B, that's a bit darker. You can see what else have I got here. That one is unknown. 3B, that's even darker. Okay, I want something dark so that you guys can see nicely. So, when I look at a drawing and I have to try and copy that, I usually print it out for myself on the size that I'm going to be painting it to make life a lot easier. Then you can fold that reference material 4 times, and you can divide your canvas space that is the same size also in 4 equal parts. And when you open your reference material, you'll be able to see that you've got 4 equal squares. And that basically indicates to you where is the center point of your canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. Now this is basically just over 8 inches. So here is my center point. I'm going to go ahead and draw this in so that you guys can see what I'm meaning. And then I'm just going to measure it like this. Oops, here we go. So it's basically here's the middle. Right. So now you've got square 1, square 2, square 3, and square 4. So if you look at your reference material that I will share with you guys, then and you do what I just instructed, you will find 4 individual squares that give you an indication of where lines meet or cross this grid, and that helps you to place it in a composition that is very much like copying. So that makes life a lot easier. The next thing I do is I don't look at the detail of my sketch at all. I try to just look at the basic shapes. So I noticed that the belly or the whole base of the beaver is roughly a circle stationed in quadrant 4 and a little bit of it, like a quarter of it, in quadrant 3. So just go ahead and just draw a basic circle for yourself, lightly with your pencil. Just really loosen your elbow. Take your pencil somewhere in the middle or towards the back. You're not going to write, you're going to draw. So loosen up your muscles and just begin to move your whole arm in a circular fashion so that you can get a basic circle shape. It's okay that there's many lines that's repeating, but it helps your brain to sort of begin to see the volume and the shape, basic shape of the belly area or the main body part of the beaver. Next, I look at the head and I notice it's slightly oval. It's not as round, and it's located mostly in quadrant number 2, and again a bit of it in quadrant 1. So go ahead and do the same and give yourself that little bit of an oval. Then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to slightly indent and connect these two circles. And that's basically the neck of the beaver. Now I'm going to look at its arms. Now this arm, what is this? His right arm, which is on my left, is mostly in quadrant number 3. And the outer part of this arm is slightly aligned with the round shape of its belly. But you see a little bit of a shoulder line that breaks this neckline. And I'm going to go ahead and just create this beautiful elongated C shape. And at the tip of it, there is 3 long fingers. Now the same with the left arm. It starts in quadrant 4, but most of it is in quadrant 2. So go ahead and repeat that almost like a D shape, but it's slightly longer. There we go. Oh, isn't that cute? And now we go ahead and do 3 long ovals, and those are its fingers. Let's go ahead and look at the feet. You will see that the right foot, you don't see the whole foot, you just see the side of the foot, and it begins in quadrant 3 and it finishes in quadrant 4. It's basically 2 elongated shapes. So you can go ahead and draw 2 kind of hot dog buns or baguettes just to give yourself the idea. And the same with the left foot. It's basically 3 baguettes lying next to each other. That's the basic shape, right? But now you can see where that outline hits this part of the foot. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it. There we go. So you can be a little bit more deliberate. And now just the outline. You're going to make that a little bit darker and connect it. So this part in the middle is all going to disappear. Same with this little foot. It's just going to disappear. There we go. Now, let's look at the mouth. I basically see, if I divide the face in half and in half, that the nose, which is basically a triangle, is located in the middle of that. So go ahead and draw a bit of a triangle that's slightly bowing down. Then there's a little bit of a lip, and it immediately splits into the 2 white teeth. Now draw a V line that's elongated and a V line that's elongated, almost to that halfway point that you have added. Now in this quadrant, next to the nose is a small eye, and the same on the other side. Cuteness! Let's look at the ear. This ear starts there and it's slightly looping down and back on itself. So it's not like a bear, it's a little bit more droopy. And the inner earlet is closer at the top bit and thicker at the bottom. Same with this one, slightly droopy. There we go. Now let's focus on the tail. And the tail is completely on the left hand side of the canvas, and it starts in block 3 and it crosses over into block 1 and finishes in block 3 again. Notice that it almost looks like a spatula, so try to have it like a cricket bat where it's a little bit broader, slightly squared off at the end, and comes back in almost like a teardrop shape if you would have to finish this drawing, like so. So you can imagine a squared off teardrop shape, like so, that connects to just behind the feet. But we're not going to draw the inside. It's just so that you can imagine that shape before we worry about, any details. Then in the center, I've got 3 lines that runs parallel with the tail, but notice that it's not ending in this perimeter line. So it's slightly disappearing. And then also slightly concave kind of grid lines that cross over like that, indicating some of the texture that's on the tail of the beaver. And with that, we have basically done a basic sketch of our beaver, and now we can begin to play with this. So make sure you've got something to drink, take regular breaks, and don't let the process overwhelm you. It's absolutely not necessary. Now I'm going to teach you 2 basic painting techniques during this beautiful session. And the first is negative painting and the second is positive painting. What the heck? Okay, so positive painting is when we are painting the beaver. That is what we are focusing on. It's the positive space in the composition. But what about the background? That would be the negative space. So you would basically have to paint around the beaver in order to fill up the negative space. But it can be a lot of fun. But before we start with that, a good idea is to do a basic outline. So for that, you're going to need your black paint. And I'm just using Lucas Studio Iron Oxide Black in case you are interested. You don't need a lot. I'm going to take this fineliner of mine. I'm going to get it nice and wet and bring that brush to this paint and just use the tip of the brush to pick up some of the paint, and then to just blend that water that was in the brush with the paint. So that gives it a nice ink-like consistency so that you can draw a beautiful line with it. So make it nice and juicy. You don't want thick paint that's not going to move because that's going to frustrate you. So when you've loaded your brush and you've rolled your brush, you basically just want paint on the bottom 3/4 of your brush, not all the way to the hilt. Try. Okay. So now we're going to look at this beautiful outline. And now we're basically only going to draw in the lines that we want to use in our painting. So not all of the plotting lines, that's going to be painted over. So I'm going to begin with this tail. I'm resting on my pinky and I'm holding my brush not so close, not below the ferrule, just so that there's space, very vertical. And I'm just going to gently press down and just ride on my pinky. If you're going to press hard, the brush mark is going to be thicker. If you're going to press lighter, the brush mark is going to be finer. I wanted to demonstrate that so that you can see the harder you press, the thicker your line will be. So it does take a bit of practice in the beginning to not press too hard because we're so used to holding pencils and pens. This is a slightly lighter thing, so you need to sort of use your whole arm in order to have a little bit of control and to go lightly with your marks. It helps to make a brush mark with confidence. It sort of will give you a clearer line. And it's not always necessary to have a continuous line. If you're doing something, sometimes it helps you just dot and drag. I find that looks a little bit more painterly. Cute! So you'll notice I'm not worried about this big blob here because it's a beautiful teachable moment. I'm going to show you guys how we're going to refine this using negative painting later. Right, let's continue. So the facial shape of the beaver is basically now going to connect to the neck, crossing over the ear, like so. Do it in zones. Now we have that arm. Cute! And 3 little hands, or 3 fingers, 3 little hands. That sounds freaky. And I'm going to connect that bottom finger with its belly, running all the way across and connect it to the other side. Let's draw in the other arm. Ready! And you'll notice I pick up a little bit of brush paint every time I come in for another region. It's droopy, that ear, beautiful. Cuteness. It's droopy, that ear. It's okay if it's a little bit thicker there. Another area we can fix later. To go. I'm going to go ahead and put in the eye completely. Let's add a drop of water to our paint. So you're always aware of what's going on in your studio. Maybe it's, humid and hot and your paint will dry faster or get gloopy on you. Maybe you're in a cold environment. It will all have an impact on how your paint behaves on any particular day. So that's why some days you have a good painting day, you have a lot of resilience within you and patience, and other days it doesn't always, feel so great, and it feels like everything is going wrong and you struggle to get the paint and the brush to do what you envision. Those days, you just breathe into it and you make the best of it because there's always a lesson to be learned. Gorgeous. So now you see all of my structural lines that I have on the inside that just help me to visualize the volume and shape of what we are drawing. I didn't do those because they are not necessary. We now have an official beaver on our page. Isn't that beautiful? Alright, you guys, I'm going to continue. I might break this up in small little steps for you guys so that you can have little episodes and do one thing at a time, take a break, take a progress photo for yourself. And the reason why I say that, taking progress photos of your art is so valuable because as you go through your layers, you can always look back at where you started with the process and you see how you transform your painting. If you don't take progress photos, what happens is you only always just see the current phase of your painting. And sometimes it helps to see where you were and where you are going. But beyond that, It is really a valuable thing as you teach yourself about your own brush marks and where you can refine it. And it helps you to judge your art a little bit better. Because when you look at your art live in front of you, your brain has a certain image or perception of that because it is so close to you. But when you see something on your smartphone, it's completely different. Your brain now looks at this from a distance. There is perception and clarity, and you can see the art almost a little bit more objective. You know it's your art, but it's on a phone, so it's like away from you. So your brain perceives it as something from the outside, and suddenly you see a little bit more clearly what it is that you are doing and what you need to work on. We'll get into all of those details as we go. So, with every little step that I take on this painting, I will give you guys an episode or a period of rest so that you can do that, and then take a photograph, share it with me on the Creative Heart, and tell me what you learned from that. Or if you don't want to tell me what you learned from it, just share your image and how you feel about it. Do you like what just happened? Do you love what just happened? Do you absolutely hate what just happened? That honesty is exactly where the growth occurs, because you will soon realize after reading your own comments for a while that you have a certain perception, and that is where we want to begin to tinker a little bit, especially if that perception is negative or tainted with a judgment or a trauma or a story of yourself where you keep giving your power away, right? That is exactly how this follows through, just so that you guys are aware of how amazing a coach your own canvas will be for your life. Just with the right guidance and perception and the right question at the right time will help you to realize things. And that realization is what I call awareness. When we have awareness and we see something, we can never unsee it again. From that moment forward, it just requires honesty on ourselves, the correct choice in the moment, and we keep aligning ourselves with where it is that we want to go, our goal, our vision for our lives, right? So that's how we're going to change our lives, one brush mark at a time. Great. So I think that is a great first start, just getting the composition right, getting the line work done, and now you have a canvas that is ready to begin to play. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Welcome back. This is a beautiful pilgrimage with the beaver as our guide, and this is the beginning of our beginner friendly phase of our beaver painting art journey. So for this, I'm going to be doing a little bit of negative painting today, and I decided to use a beautiful bright blue, and the blue for me connects here with the water element, because this is a water guide that is here to teach us all about building in difficult environments. So while I'm painting this beautiful background, there's a few things I want you to pay attention to. I'm basically just going to paint everything but the beaver. That's just to give you clarity. So everything around here, all the way to the edge, is going to be painted in this beautiful blue. And I'm going to be using my square brush, and when needed I might switch to one of my other brushes, which is my filbert. But the square brush gives me a nice angle to get into tight corners like this. So notice how I turn my brush to go around certain areas. Also notice here, I'm going to slightly cut into that black mark with my blue, and instantly I'm going to refine this outline that I deliberately made too fat and too big for you. So if your entire beaver looks like this, it's fine. That's what I started to do in the beginning. So you can learn to cut with your paint into that to make that outline finer again. So never panic. This is the joy of acrylic paint, right? Okay, so while I'm doing this negative painting, I'm just going to begin to tell you guys a little bit more about the beaver. Step into the quiet magic of creation. This next transfiguration to your acrylic art journey invites you into the world of the beaver, the secret builder, the patient dream maker, the quiet architect of transformation. The spirit of the beaver guides us into a powerful inner alchemy, the art of steady devoted creation, the courage to move from dreaming into doing, the wisdom of building something meaningful one step at a time, and the magic of using what you already have to create something extraordinary. Look how beautiful this is now, isolating our beaver. It is placed it exactly where we want it. It's eliminated the background. You don't see any of those drawings. It's all been covered up with this beautiful blue. And the reason why it works is because the blue that I've used is opaque. It has a very good coverage. Now, let me teach you something. On the back of your tube of paint, that's now if you don't have something that's really cheap, usually the student grade and slightly higher will begin to give you information on your tubes. So this particular tube has this little square, sometimes it's a little round circle, and you can see that it's completely filled in. So it even says opaque. That means that your paint will give you 100% coverage. Then you get semi-opaque. That means the half of the tube is black and the other half is white. It means it has some coverage. And then if this is completely open, then it means it is transparent. Now, usually your quinacridones, those are transparent pigments. Let me see on this one. This is transparent. You can see the square here is completely black. And that is a cerulean blue. And this is a phthalo blue. This is also, actually phthalo blue says it's opaque, but it can be transparent as well. And the reason it should actually have the half is because if you add a lot of water to it, it looks like watercolour. It's highly staining, and I think that's why they say high coverage. But if you did a background with a transparent pigment in your acrylic range, you might have to do more than one layer in order to completely cover anything in the background that you don't want to see. So it helps to sort of understand your medium and what is in your tube that you are painting with. It's not just a color. There is transparency, opacity, and value and chroma that you should consider. What does all of that mean? Well, the value means if you get yourself a color chart like this, is how light or how dark the color is. That is the value. The chroma is how bright or intense. In other words, here on the outside perimeter, you have the pure chroma, squeezed straight out of the tube, just like we used this blue. We didn't add anything, we didn't mix it with another color. But the minute you add black or white, you can begin to reduce the chroma and you begin to tint or tone your color. That means if I use this blue, that's at its brightest chroma, and it's about in the middle of the color chart as far as depth is concerned. If I add black to it, I am basically beginning to tone my color. So now I'm basically making a grayer, darker, blue, which is a little bit more flat in tone. Okay, so it's not so bright anymore. If I mix the blue, oh, I just need a kitchen towel before I continue. This is something you're going to need a lot of, a whole roll of kitchen towels. Let's see, is this still active? Yes. Okay, here I've got titanium white. If I add my white to my blue, I am tinting my blue. In other words, I'm tinting it lighter with the white. Can you see this is much lighter than the original, but it is also not as bright. So the minute you add white or black to your paint, you change the chroma of it slightly, making it slightly flatter in hue, and you are making it either lighter or darker. So if I keep adding white to this, it will keep going a little bit more and more chalky and a little bit more pastel. If I keep adding black to that, it will keep going darker and grayer towards the black spectrum. Okay, so that is an important color mixing tip that I want to share with you guys, because as we continue on our painting journey, especially towards the more advanced painting, these skills become very important, because I really like to teach my apprentices that you don't necessarily always paint straight from the tube. It's a great place to start. I started there, and there are still opportunities where you will lean into that bright hue kind of color, especially in a project like this that might look beautiful in a children's room. So that is where we're going to lean into, right? So just a quick paint mixing lesson there for you guys, because there's so much to share with you. I don't want to overwhelm you. So this is a good place again to stop, take a photograph and share it with me on our beautiful creative art group, and tell me what you like about it or what you don't like about it, because those answers is not so much for me. It is a reflection for you to consider, and maybe it is again your own perception or judgment or criticism of yourself that you've been taught as a kid to repeat as an adult because it seemed safe in order to navigate your life. So let's think about that. So join me in the next session where we jump over to positive painting, and we're going to begin to paint our beaver. Welcome back, dear pilgrim. I hope that your journey into this beautiful land of the beaver has started to bring some awareness to your reality. And in this episode, we are going to jump over now to positive painting, and we are going to be painting our beaver. And for that, we're going to be using a beautiful burnt sienna. Now, this burnt sienna here is said to be transparent, so we might have to do more than one layer in order to finish our beaver. So I'll get into that with you guys. So let's dispense a little bit of burnt sienna. And let's see what is going to happen. So I would like to just wet my brush and just use my kitchen towel to drag off the excess moisture, just so that my brush is nice and juicy, and when I begin to load my brush with paint, it is easier to apply. It must feel like butter, like silk. So again, you can see I'm loading the first 2/3 of my brush with paint, so that should make it a little bit easier. I'm going to start on the tail. That's a nice way to sort of see how translucent this paint is. And again, here I will have an opportunity to cut into that black line to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to do a first layer with my burnt sienna. Now, areas we're going to skip are the teeth and the nose and the inside of the ears and also the sort of little nails or fingers. Yes, so here you can see that the underlying sort of marks, if I don't apply my paint too thickly, is still shining through. So I'm going to lean into that and not apply my layer too thickly, because that way I can still see my texture lines underneath. And it actually helps me now to sort of blend that in and sort of create that texture without having to add anything more. But I'm also very mindful of the direction of my brush marks. I'm not brushing like this, because look what that will look like. You see, too much texture. So we're going to follow the grain or sort of the shape, and as it is something that comes out of the body, I think it makes sense to just lean into that kind of marks. Notice also how I turn my brush when I go into a tighter area. Instead of keeping it flat, I'm turning it on its side and using only the side part of my brush. Gorgeous. So while I paint the rest of this beaver, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about the beaver with you guys.
Listen closely, and I will tell you who I am. I am Beaver, the quiet architect of the wild places. I do not rush, and I do not dream idly. I build. When I arrive in your world, it is because your dreams are ready to take form, but they will not shape themselves. I ask you to move from imagining to doing. The place one branch, one intention, one action at a time. You do not need to see the entire structure yet, only the next piece in your pause. I teach you that vision alone is not enough. Dreams require devotion. Creation asks for your hands. Do not be overwhelmed by the size of what you wish to build. I do not fell the forest in a single night. I return again and again, guided by instinct and purpose, knowing, placing, adjusting. What seems small becomes mighty enough through consistency. And I do not build alone. Look around you. Who are your kin, your companions, your fellow builders? Invite them into your vision. When hearts and hands align, the river itself begins to cooperate. Together, you create not only structure, but sanctuary. There are times, too, when I come to you as a whisper of completion. You have worked, you have labored, and now the waters begin to gather behind what you have built. This is your moment to receive, but listen carefully. What you have created must now be tended with wisdom. Balance your work with home, your ambition with nourishment, your giving with your receiving. A strong foundation is not only built, it is maintained. And I'm here to remind you that your life is your creation. Be intentional, be patient, be devoted to the process. Use what you have, trust your instincts, shape your world with care, and when your time comes to pause, to stand upon your dam and watch the waters reflect the sky, allow yourself that stillness. For even the builder must rest, and even the river must be listened to. I am Beaver, and I'm here to help you build something that lasts.
Right. So now I think we can paint in the ears, the toes, and the fingers. I'm just using my black here with my fine liner, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill in that space in the ear. The nose, and again I'm going to try and follow the contour of this shape. Let's add a bit of water here. The paint has started to thicken a bit on me. Nice. It's adorable. And I'm also going to go ahead and just add a little bit of a toenail to those flippers. I'm also gonna, while I've got the black, I'm gonna go ahead and just enhance our beautiful detail lines. So basically you're redoing all of the outlines again. It adds a little bit of a comic kind of finish to it, but I think it is cute. Very gently, right on the toe of your brush. And it doesn't even have to be aligned with your original lines, it just creates a bit of texture and line. It feels like the beaver is smiling at me. So now we'll go ahead and do that outline, but I'm not going to try and make it a solid outline. I'm going to dot skip. Securing my hand with my pinky. Nice. Almost there. This dude is just too cute. I like him. Beautiful. I think that is enough for this session. So I will see you guys in the last session when we play a little bit with our background, have some fun, and do the reveal. So I'll see you guys real soon. Welcome back, dear pilgrim. This is getting loads of fun. So I hope you guys are enjoying this painting for beginners tutorial. I'm really having a lot of fun. It is nice to just do something without a lot of pressure on you and to familiarize myself with the energy of the beaver. And so far, it's been very interesting in what it has to say. So now we're going to play a little bit with our background. So today's session is all about just fun, expression, and taking this little picture into something a little bit more elevated that might be ready to pop into a picture frame. And I think we need a little bit of contrast in the background. So I've grabbed my Grit stick. Now this is the interesting thing about acrylics. It really leans into the experimental, where you try to make a mark with a paint using something extraordinary or very ordinary. And in this case, I really like the size of my print, and I'm going to use the lid to print with. So printing is going to help me to create a pattern that I can duplicate or repeat, and that is going to bring in some fun into our background. So I'm going to lean into my titanium white paint. I'm going to put a dollop of that there. And I'm just going to maybe flatten it down a bit with my palette knife so it's not such a heap. I want it to be a little bit more of a printing pad. That feels better. Let me go ahead and scrape that paint onto the back there. A little pro tip, always clean your palette knife immediately, then you never have to clean it afterwards. Right, so I'm going to just get a fresh piece of kitchen towel. And I'm just going to smear this white paint over my Crit cap. And just have a fair amount of paint, not too much, but not too little either. And look at the beautiful sort of image that happens when I press into it. It almost creates like a little bit of a vein that could be reminiscent of plant. So I'm just observing what's on my printing pad now, and that is what I'm going to put down. Now I think random sort of marks might be nice, but I'm also thinking like it looks maybe a little bit more organized if you think of it like wallpaper. So not just random, but at least some cohesive repetition of pattern. So let's start at the top. I like it when things go off my canvas a little bit. So I think I'm going to start with half on, half off. Let's give it a stamp. And between each stamp, you must just come back and apply paint and press down, lift up so that you have some kind of texture, and maybe just arrange that in a way that would make sense. Although, like I said, totally experimental. Love that. And now I'm going to go for one in the middle between the two top ones. That one is slightly higher, but that's okay. Interesting. So right behind the beaver, I'm not going to bother, but I'm sort of going to try and remember where this might have been. Okay, so that row will be absent, so here we start again with one here. I'm slightly going to miss a line. Bring one very close to the beaver. And maybe we see a little bit of it just peeking out on another part of our beautiful little beaver painting. I really like that, so I think that is doing the trick for me, and I'm just going to clean my foot cap immediately by wiping it off for printing on another day. I will basically suggest that this completely dries. You can use a heat gun. So this is the heat gun. It blows air like a hairdryer, but it's much hotter than a heat gun. So if you're going to use a heat gun or a hairdryer, always try to use it on a medium setting, or keep your heat gun at least 30 centimeters away from your painting. Because if you're going to go closer, remember acrylic paint is basically a plastic base. It's going to melt, it's going to release toxins. So be mindful when you dry a layer, because you need to carry on producing. Another way to dry this is just to let it be. Go make a cup of mindful tea, or come back to it tomorrow. You can also leave it in the sun for 10-15 minutes and come back to it, because that should dry it quite fast as well. I'm going to use a heat gun now. I'll edit it out so that you don't have to listen to this noise, because I think there's one more thing you can do in order to bring this basic painting journey to a conclusion. Right, welcome back. So I think that the beaver needs another layer, simply because that burnt umber is transparent. You can see a lot of texture. But I also love the texture because it speaks of the hair of the beaver. So I'm going to go ahead now and let's use our burnt umber. At this time, I'm also going to, after loading my brush, I'm going to just run the toe of my brush in a little bit of black. Because look what is going to happen. You're going to have a little bit of striation. So just sort of smear it once or twice just to see how potent the black is, because you don't want it to take over too much. And let's just begin to add a little bit of fun. Every time you load your brush, you must just be mindful when you come in here. And when it starts to look like one color, then you know it's time to load again. Using a bit more of the black over the arms. And maybe I'll just go in between that grid mark just for a little bit more texture. And definitely a little bit of black and brown on the feet, making it a little bit darker. It won't be so bright. There we go. Oh, it's just too cute. I'm going to take my fine liner and I'm going to lean into my titanium white here, and very carefully I'm going to just enhance the white of the feet. Cuteness! I think this is going to take a minute to dry. So I will have to leave this till our last session when we just wrap things up and we just share with one another how to finish up your painting and sign it. Hello you guys, so this is all dry now and I just absolutely love the texture that we have here. So I just want to again use a little bit of contrast as a way to just bring something out of this design. We can add a little bit of pattern, repetition, line, anything that you really want to. But I thought I would go ahead and I'm gonna just, it might take me a minute, but I want to do a little bit of line work around each of these circles. And this for me is just a reminder that the beaver builds with sticks, and by organizing it in a pattern, the beaver is able to build a dam that can withstand incredible pressures. In fact, our engineers that build dams can learn a thing or two from the beaver. Right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and use my marker and I'm just going to do a few cute little whiskers. Awesome! And the little beaver is painted. I really am so excited. I can't wait to get the masking tape off. So a little bit of a pro tip, if you ever work with masking tape, especially on watercolor paper, you need to warm your tape up before the time, just to make sure that the glue lifts, especially if you use painter's tape. But I am confident that this is gonna come off very easily. And immediately it gives your framer a little bit of space if you do decide to frame this little guy and maybe put it in a child's room. This is so rewarding. I love peeling off the tape. Always pull away from your artwork. Don't pull towards your artwork, just in case the paint wants to tear or the paper wants to tear. Isn't that just cute? 4 words. I absolutely love that. Now, I'm going to sign this. In my new sigil signature, and hopefully you guys will go ahead and try this yourself and get to know the Beaver Animal Spirit Guide and its beautiful lessons that it wants to share with you. So up next is going to be the fine art painting of the beaver. That is going to upskill your skills in acrylic paint. This is a little bit more intermediate to advanced, but it doesn't matter. I encourage even beginners to try, because hidden inside the process of every brush mark lies a beautiful opportunity to awaken and recognize your true self. So do journey along, even if it is just to watch the videos and enjoy the process along with me, and then to introspect on the muses that goes with the process. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye for now.